And we are live. Everybody, welcome to the Point Three podcast live here on YouTube. Thank you for joining us on this nice Monday night. We got Funko Lou, Spider Brando, and now you guys might be surprised. We have our first guest, a wonderful, wonderful man, Chief Fabian. Fabian, if you can just give us a little introduction about yourself here as our first guest, where can people find you? What it is that you do?
Well, I kind of dipped my toes into a lot of pools of water, nerdy water. But you can find me on TikTok under the name Chieftain72, as well as Instagram, Chief Fabian on Twitter. Um, I mostly just spew about what I'm up to, whether it be collecting, reading comics, reading manga, what series we're watching, what movies we went to go see. Just living the nerdy life as best I can, consuming as much I can before I go 6 feet under, and that's how you got to live life. That's just my ultimate goal. I love collecting things, getting new things. Newest edition coming soon is the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man 2 No Way Home. Legal reasons they had to call it Amazing Spider-Man 2 Hot Toy. So it'll be coming Thursday. I'm very excited. I need all three. I'm gonna have all three. I got Toby on a payment plan. We're gonna have all three. I already got Tom behind me somewhere. Yeah, there he is somewhere. If I figure out how to point on this camera. But yeah, I just love all things nerdy in almost every capacity: anime, comics, manga, wrestling, and I just love expressing that as any way I can.
No, dude, that's awesome. Well, congrats on that Grail because Hot Toys are awesome. I think if anybody knows what they are, if you don't, go Google it. Come, you have us open on another tab, and you stay here with Point 3. No, that is awesome, man. Well, thank you again for coming on. We're all very appreciative of it. But guys, how you guys doing today? Before we talk all the crazy Marvel rumors and possible destruction of Marvel going on, how you guys feeling?
I'm sitting hopeful still, man. I'm still riding my Blue Beetle high, so I'm gonna take that all the way to Loki.
How high was that Blue Beetle high for you? What did you show us off screen? Go ahead and show it off for the people at home.
Oh wait, this is the first one. Blue Beetle.
Yeah,
nasty. Blue Beetle. Yeah. And you know what? Go back and listen to last week's live stream because we were talking about two characters that are going to put DCU on the map. One of them, Blue Beetle.
John Stewart,
Green Lantern. Ooh. Oh, man. If they visually do, and no spoilers, because Fabian, you haven't seen Blue Beetle yet, have you?
No. I was waiting. I'm one of those.
No spoilers.
WB has wronged me one too many times.
Listen, that's a fair point.
WB, not DC. I still love DC.
But visually, if they can do what they did with Blue Beetle with a Green Lantern character, oh my!
I think we talked about that a little bit last week. Exactly. So if you haven't, go check that out, as Lou said. But speaking of DC, while we're on the quick topic of DC, did anybody watch The Flash on Max? Spider Brando, your favorite?
No, absolutely not. Get that cheeks out of here.
I had to watch it for a second time.
So Fabian said you saw it for a second time, and Spider Brando, you said what? You saw what?
I said, take that cheeks away. I didn't freaking watch that shit. I've seen clips. I've been a lot of clips coming out on Twitter. No, I've seen it before, but I'm not a big fan of that movie. None of us are really big fans. But there was there's a lot of social media accounts and clips that are finally just posting clips on Twitter and stuff. So I've watched a couple scenes that I've seen here and there, but still cheeks.
I'll throw this out here. The people who are reposting about it now, like since the initial hype died down, there are a lot of personal reasons why people are posting why they like it and what they're connecting to with Barry's story. And it's like long paragraphs, mostly on Instagram. Then I'm like, okay, I get that. Like I get that feel. But I think on a rewatch, I can't. I tried to. I went to go hit play. I bailed and I switched to Matrix Resurrections and I watched that instead.
Oof.
I
watched it a second time because my wife hadn't seen it yet, and she was not too thrilled. She was just, her review of it was like, it wasn't bad, but I'm probably not going to remember that in like a week. Like that was basically her, like, you know, she's not very intricate with her reviews of film. So when you just put it like that, it just kind of just summarizes it anyways, that it's just not much about it sticks with you.
No.
Because there's nothing really to look forward to.
No. And the funny thing is, I don't know if this is just after the hype of everything. I've started going into more Facebook groups for collecting stuff. And a lot of them were talking The Flash. And people that hadn't seen it started watching it on HBO Max over the weekend. And it was funny because a good majority, I would say maybe 80 to 20%, the 80% did not like the movie. They were talking about how, oh, I don't understand how, you know, people really like this. What was the hype about? It was bad, you know, visually, but not only visually in terms of, it was also bad in terms of story. So is it the hype that was going around that really clouded people's judgment?
I wonder, James Gunn's words really, like, that was like its biggest selling point for a lot of people when it was making its rounds. What he said about the movie was just, like, in my opinion, it was flat out not true. It was not one of the best superhero movies ever made. Like, there's cool stuff in it. There's heart. It can tug your heartstrings for a couple scenes, but overall, it's a mess.
No, and I think I remember us kind of talking about that. That one of the big carrying points about this movie and that generated truly a lot of hype is people like Tom Cruise were coming out and saying, like, this is the best comic book film he's seen. I forget what other director came out and said the same thing. It was these big names that normally have nothing to do with superhero cinema coming out and talking up The Flash. And then when The Flash got screened early, all the influencers were like, yo, best DC movie ever. Love it. 10 out of 10. DC's on the map. And then we watch it and we're like, what did they see? I don't quite understand what they saw. So again, I really wonder if all the hype got behind it. Because what's interesting, you contrast that with something like Blue Beetle, where a lot of people are kind of saying the same thing, like, and I think genuinely this time, where it's like, hey, best DC movie for a very long time, yet people are still kind of knocking it, you know. And this, unfortunately, the box office isn't backing it up that much because people are still like, well, look at the box office. They said that they needed 240 million and they're only at, like, I forget what they're at, like 80 or almost at 100. I don't know why it went for The Flash and not Blue Beetle.
Dude, you know what? It's funny because looking at Marvel now post Secret Invasion and looking post Flash, I really think people just want, at a surface level, you just want a soft reset to point into direction and be like, oh, this is what we were supposed to be doing. And I think that's fair to ask. But at the same time, I think it's hurting every single thing that's coming out because everyone's just looking over those movies, over the wall. What's on the other side? What's on the other side? What's on the other side? Without really taking the time to enjoy what's been presented in front of us. Like, it will come eventually. But I just think we've been spoiled as fans. I really think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people have been spoiled. And at the end of the day, it's hard not to think what comes next.
Yeah. We used to get more breadcrumbs back in the day, though.
Yeah.
A lot more breadcrumbs. Now it's just even with just how many projects they can increase the number of projects, but you would think that would have meant that would have increased the breadcrumbs, but there's less breadcrumbs than even way back.
Yeah.
So how do you like triple your amount of runtime in your phases and have way less like connections and breadcrumbs for what's going to come in the future than even your past phases? I mean, I don't have any like real statistics in front of me to prove it. That's just how it feels. And we're getting more than we ever did back then. On like we were getting shows, movies back to back to back to back until the writer's strike now on Secret Invasion, they dial it back. But I just feel like that's the main thing that people are just missing is just some sort of coherent. Even just like I'm hungry. Give me a snack, something.
Yeah. And go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah. I wonder if that sentiment of nothing connects is more so the nostalgia of 10 years, because when looking back at phase 1, right, nothing really starts connecting to like Avengers. Yes, they kind of play into each other with their post-credit scenes, and you don't have to wait as long. But what I mean is you don't get the entire scope of what the MCU is really about until phase 2. Maybe, because at the end of Avengers, yes, they tease Thanos, but you're like, all right, well, what's he going to do? And then they really only tell you the first Infinity Stone, like, that is an Infinity Stone, is in Guardians of the Galaxy, which is like tail end of phase 2. And if you think about that, that's a long time for really those connections to really get 100% set up. And I think we're kind of in the same thing now where we're getting the multiverse breadcrumbs. Those dots just don't connect yet because we're missing something. And we're maybe 1 or 2 or 3 projects away from really now connecting it, and then everybody being like, oh, I get it now. I see. Because again, you look at something like Thor the Dark World where the ether makes no sense. You're like, or aether or whatever it is. You're like, what in the world is that? And then later on, they're like, oh, yeah, that's an Infinity Stone too.
I have been stringing up a theory as we've been, or not theory, but to me, it's just like, I know everything is going to connect eventually, especially with all these different multiverse stuff going on and different. It's just like they have a lot of storylines going on at once with the amount of projects, and everyone thinks every project has to be connected to every other project. But like, there's no reason for a Wakanda Forever project to be connected to a Kang and like multiverse project. That's just at this moment in time, I will say, at least. Or like She-Hulk to be connected to the multiverse. That doesn't, just because it's under the multiverse saga doesn't mean everything has to be part of the multiverse story. And that's where I think the downfall of Infinity War and Endgame come to play, because a lot of fans hopped in that bandwagon and hopped in the hype and binged the entire MCU in between that Infinity War Endgame gap so that they could be part of the theater experience that they missed out on. And that led to a lot of them forgetting how long it took for these movies to build up and storylines together. It's like you said, phase 1, phase 2 barely had a gist of what was going on till phase 2. But now it's just like they got a lot of storylines. Not even just freaking movies, TV shows. Apparently Thunderbolts was supposed to connect to Brave New World way more than it is now, or supposed to connect. So it's just like they got a lot going on, and they got a lot of stuff to cover that they can't just connect everything right away.
Yeah, I find that a lot of fans online, the movies that they keep bringing up and like their reasons for the ones that they keep reflecting on to be like, oh, I miss when Marvel was good. It's the movies that seem to be the most necessary for a binge. like if the movie didn't further the story in the universe in any way, then it wasn't peak. It was mid. Like if it did not like let's because I'll say to like people that don't have that much of an attention span. Here's the movies for the if you want to watch Infinity War and Endgame, you just have to watch Avengers, Captain America, Winter Soldier, Age of Ultron, Thor Ragnarok, and maybe the first two Guardians. If you really want to know what they're doing in that movie, probably I would throw them in there, but it makes more sense from the Avengers standpoint to put them there. Am I missing anything?
I'd say Civil War.
Oh, Civil War. Yeah, that one definitely. I knew it was 5. It's usually 5 that I tell people, but I just forgot about Civil War for some reason. But like Captain America movies are incredibly important. Ragnarok leads right into the beginning of Infinity War. Like if you watch Ragnarok right before Infinity War, it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
But like that's what people like. That's why those movies are great to people, because the stakes are so high and so integral and form changing to the universe that you can't ignore them. Versus something like Ant-Man and the Wasp, skippable. Captain Marvel, skippable. I don't know. Even like some of the origin stories, like you can get away with not watching Doctor Strange or Ant-Man 1.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point you can't, because Doctor Strange introduces the Time Stone. And I mean, I know we're talking about Ant-Man and Quantumania, and while yes, it probably isn't the greatest film ever, it still introduces to the casual audience that really didn't watch Loki, it introduces the big bad of the MCU in Kang, or the assumed big bad, and if you think about Guardians, and when the first time we heard Infinity Stone, like 100%, as far as I can remember, I might be wrong, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 came out in 2014. Infinity War came out in 2018. That is 4 years. 4 years for it to fully connect. And yes, we do remember Guardians as amazing, but we still forget 4 years. 4 years is a very long time. A very long time to connect back and fully, so people can fully be like, oh yeah, the Power Stone thing from the first one is necessary for the Gauntlet too. Oh, now I get it. But it took 4 years.
We did get a fair amount of content in those 4 years, though. Like Phase 3 was pretty stacked.
Yeah, it was. But the point is, it still took 4 years.
Yeah.
It isn't something that was just Guardians, Infinity War, click. It was 4 years, and then however many movies the rest of Phase 2 and Phase 3 were, to really fully connect. And I think people kind of forget that, where it's like, now if it just doesn't connect immediately, the MCU sucks, MCU's mid, Marvel's trash, Marvel's dead.
By the way, I don't feel this way. I was just talking about the people that are the comment sections and like the videos where it's like, these are the top movies because they did something for the universe. Like I remember Shang-Chi. I would talk that movie up like to no end. That was like one of my favorite comic book movies now. And I would get comments saying, "Oh, it didn't really add anything. It's not even necessary. It didn't do anything for the MCU. Like it didn't affect the universe at all." I was like, so how does that make it a bad film on its own? Like I'm not hearing the problem here.
Absolutely.
But then everybody loves Moon Knight, which also had nothing to really do with like developing the MCU.
And it's Disney Plus.
Yeah, which one are you guys gonna pick, fans, man?
Everyone has a different opinion about everything in Phase 4. I haven't seen a single ranking that matches up beat for beat with other people's.
No.
Like, it is actually pretty bizarre to me. It's like you go for the Infinity Saga, and everybody's usually pretty. You got your bottom tier ones that people usually just shuffle around. You got the middle, and then you got the top ones that people shuffle around. Like these little things that are happening in the middle, there's not too much variation for the most part. But then Phase 4 is just like, I love Moon Knight. I hated Moon Knight. I liked She-Hulk. I hated Secret Invasion. I love Secret Invasion. Like it's just all. I know that's not Phase 4, but you know what I'm saying.
I mean, with all that being said, though, especially now, and we're going to talk about it, getting into the point of, it's rumored and apparently reported that Marvel Studios has dumped the writers for King Dynasty and Secret Wars. Now, knowing that, there are a lot of people that are like, great, I didn't like Waldron and I didn't love that what he did with Multiverse of Madness. And Jeff Loveness, I did not like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. There's too much comedy. I didn't like it. It was either Multiverse of Madness was too different, didn't really love it, didn't like Raimi as part of it, but there's a weird separation between who writes and who directs. And then there's too much comedy in the MCU, which was odd to say because the MCU was essentially founded on just having its own version of comedy. But I mean, what do you guys think now, knowing that you have people clamoring for, let's get back to basics, let's do what Marvel did in Phase 1, Hero Scroll, you talked
in those movies,
right? So it's like, what do you guys think that people want? Let's say it's a blank slate. What do fans want from 2 Avengers movies in the multiverse saga? Kick the Sprite or Brando?
We don't know. We don't know what we want. That's the problem.
Very true.
And then what we think we want is most of the time what we don't want, because it's like, damn, they just gave us exactly what we wanted. And that's a terrible dilemma that Marvel is in, trying to freaking understand their demographic.
I think it's something where the studios have to, like, one, subvert the expectations, but also in the same.
But not Last Jedi
yet. Subvert the expectation, but also at the same time exceed the expectation. Like, yeah. I've been a mega fan my whole life for these characters, and I had this image of how Avengers 1 was going to be before I went to the theater, and they somehow topped what was in my head, and that movie was just going to be forever goated to me for that reason. Like, it just, everything that I ever wanted as a child, as an adult, a teenager, just went, they delivered beyond what I expected them to give. And that feeling is just tough to it's literally like trying to catch lightning in the bottle, and doing it multiple times, which they've done to their fair point, but are they running out of gas there?
Hey, one question that I want, there's 2 things that you'd mentioned that I want to point out. One, how can you set the expectations for fans to kind of lower expectations in terms of saying, like, hey, not every project is going to connect to the end movie for this saga, but it's baby steps. But also, like you're saying with Avengers, exceeding that. Do we really, or does Marvel Studios and Disney, do they need to break things out further instead of being, hey, here's one saga, this is part 1, 2, 3, 4? Do they need to say, hey, this is going to be Earth-based, this is going to be cosmic, this is going to be, whatever? Like, do they need to further define where each project slots for people to better accept these projects when they're launched?
I think so. I feel like if Disney Plus had more well split up categories where, like, I think a lot of people were also expecting She-Hulk to be another Hulk, like literally just another Hulk, and just be doing superhero stuff as a Hulk. When her character in the comics is just nothing like that. Like, she's barely doing any superheroing. It's like a sitcom. It's just the life of Jen doing all what she does while trying to deal with being a Hulk and finding herself and all that. Basically, we've all watched the show, whether you like it or not. That's what she is. That's what she does. I feel like there should be some sort of, like, definitive, here's our street level stuff, here's our multiverse stuff, here's our other thing. But at the same time, for me, like, if you even just see the titles or have heard of these characters before, you know what's going to happen
Exactly.
in the movies. Like
Yes.
you could pretty much summarize. All right, that Daredevil's going to go in the street. Like he isn't going to go beat up Kang. Like
Why?
With the Kingpin and Bullseye. Like we're not going to do like just like Brando said. Like She-Hulk isn't going to deal with Kang or all that stuff. So most of it is pretty obvious. It's just the surprises that don't seem to be coming. Like there's hasn't been too much of a surprise yet.
They've had Marvel's had a mixed bag of stuff to deal with to themselves between just. I genuinely think COVID really took a derailment to a lot of their plans and connectivity. Like, we got to remember the original Phase 4 slate was supposed to be WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness out 2 weeks later to get the TV to like theater experience. But we never got that because theaters were shut down for a very long time. And they're really still to this day trying to like kind of play catch up from then. And now with the Raiders strike, they're just they had a lot going on.
I really feel like the writer these Avengers movies with this supposed rumor and the writers are on strike. And they're whether or not they strike a deal or whatever, they're going to find some way to get this done or get whatever slate of movies they need done for their universe. They're going to try and figure out how to get it completed in the background as much as they can. Whether they're going to give it to an AI or something, or some scab is going to jump in and write it for them. Sure, the actors can't make the movie, but they could be as well prepared to. All right, here where the strike's over, you're going to fill in this role with this awful script, and you're going to have to make gold out of a turd. Like that's what you're going to be tasked with. So these movies, for what the phases are coming from, if you already didn't enjoy what happened before, you might end up with more problems here. Like the last time this happened with the writer's strike, Wolverine Origins, that was incredibly effective. On a TV level, there were shows that were just cut halfway through, just because they didn't have the rest of the stuff, and they made up the rest of the storyline to wrap it up. Like I'm a big fan of Scrubs, that got shut down halfway through season 7. Prison Break, halfway through season 3, got shut down. So there's that type of stuff where we're going to have that type of issue maybe affecting the MCU, and even the DCU, and basically everything that we love about entertainment in America, at least. Anime is still they don't have unions over there.
But
better or worse.
Should, though.
I was gonna say baby for the worst.
Oda's out there freaking working 90-hour days.
Yeah. But
pumping out chapter after chapter.
It's bad sometimes. It gets bad.
Watch the first episode of Psalm 100.
You literally took it out of my mouth.
Everything you need to know about the work culture.
But going back to the MCU, it's one of those things that it's a twofold problem. It's part of what Spider Brando and what Fabian said, of where real life events have derailed a lot of things. To add on top of that, and being today's the 3-year passing of Chadwick Boseman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine how much they had to write around that while still being respectful to him. That's a very real world thing that you can't just get out of, and it's really going to make the plans you had. Well, now you just kind of have to, put them to the side and restart again. COVID, as Brandon said, how many times have we heard the Multiverse of Madness directors and writers come and be like, hey, we had to do a bunch of changes over and over and over again. And as we've said before, it's like the telephone game. When you start at one, it's going to be completely different from what it's going to end up, from what it ends up at. And you might have the big core thing of it, but the details are going to be so murky that it's just not going to make any sense. And some people might love it and some people might hate it. And then besides the real life stuff, the issue is that a lot of the newer characters are not as straightforward anymore as your Iron Man, your Thor, your Captain America. Like Fabian said, if you know about She-Hulk, you know that she's not just Hulk, a woman Hulk. You know that there's differences. But when you don't understand that, when you don't get the intricacies of her character, of why they made her that character, then it's confusing. If you look at Moon Knight and you constantly hear people who don't really know anything about comics, oh, well, he's Batman of Marvel. Yet if you've read or picked up a single thing of Moon Knight, you know that he is not in the slightest anything like Batman. Then you go watch the show and you're like, what the heck is this? I'm lost. I don't like it. I'm confused. That's the issue you have. It's also people not really understanding who these characters are because they have that casual mindset, and it's not a bad thing, right? It's just Marvel's job to teach them while also not straying away from the character too much, because then I think Moon Knight did a good job of doing that balance, yet you still have a small fan base that's like, oh, Moon Knight's trash because Moon Knight is too different than what he is in the comics. And yes, there is differences, but at the core, he is still the same character. So I don't know. It's a weird juggle they have to play.
One thing real quick. The third piece of this in the curveball is social media. And these large pages, I'm not going to name any names, who say, okay, we know this project is coming out. Get to know Moon Knight before you go watch Moon Knight coming out on Disney Plus, September, whatever it may be. Moon Knight is, and they go through the classic tropes that you just had mentioned. Moon Knight is like the Batman of DC, and then they show a picture of Batman on the screen, and someone's watching it, and they're like, oh, great, so I'm going to be watching MCU Batman. I love Batman. I'm probably going to love Moon Knight. And then they give you all of these pictures from pieces of comics that have nothing to do with the story that they're telling, that they may have told you they've based this on already. And you just get all these images. A team spent a lot of time, and they pump out a 12 to 20 minute video, and you're like, okay, great, I know Moon Knight going into it. And then you watch the show and you're like, well, that's not Moon Knight. I don't know who Moon Knight is. And what Marvel gave us isn't necessarily a good take on the character. That takes away from my expectation. I think there's just a lot of pages that put their influence and take their thoughts and put them in the minds of people to almost contradict what it is that Marvel Studios has been doing for years plus. And so that's one piece. But piece two that you're mentioning is you have breaks between these shows and these movies. The example, WandaVision going to Multiverse of Madness, Elizabeth Olsen doing what she did in WandaVision felt slightly different from what she did in Multiverse of Madness. You have two different people who are directing this, writing this, whatever it may be, and they're putting their interpretation on this character and pushing them forward to fit the story that they're trying to tell, for the most part. So for me, I'm thinking, wouldn't you want these people who wrote the stories to continue on so that they can finish off the story that they're telling? And so we do get more of those details put in, a furthering of the story and an elevation of what it might be versus a writer-director origin, if you will. Like, wouldn't you want a part 2 or 3?
I think you can give the example of The Last Jedi, where there was such a backlash for that movie, where he was going to direct the next movie. It was his movie. Rian Johnson was going to handle all that stuff, and that whole team was going to move on to the next one. You're going to get some continuity, a full story, but there was such a backlash to how different The Last Jedi was to all the other Star Wars movies that they went back to The Force Awakens, which was more successful with J.J. Abrams, and in my opinion came out with the worst Star Wars movie to date. But and most of it is because they backtracked on everything they set up in The Last Jedi, practically. So it's like, if that's potentially going to happen to Marvel with like the carryover with what you're mentioning, that's something that I fear is going to happen.
And now at this point, I think the comments of what's the CEO of Disney, Iger?
Yep.
Bob Iger. His comments about cutting back are concerning, not in the sense of like, oh, Disney, haha, but it's more so I feel like because of that, and just because of everything we know with Marvel about how, Kevin Feige's been on a leash before and how that went down and all that mess, I do feel like there's gonna be more studio interference, and it's gonna ultimately probably be a negative for the MCU as a whole.
Bro, it's already felt like that. When was the last time you guys felt like Feige was like front and center besides She-Hulk? Just because they referenced him. But I do not, right at this point right now, I do not associate the MCU and Kevin Feige. They're not synonymous to me like it was during the Infinity Saga.
I think the last big one was Shang-Chi, right? Because I think he did that one pretty heavy. Or at least he talked that one pretty heavy. The other ones
with Guardians? Like Guardians 2? Because that was like the last major movie we got, right? Unless
it's
Mandela affecting. I don't know.
I mean,
that too. I mean, it could also be though that but I think to Lou's point is that felt more like a James Gunn thing than Kevin Feige. Because I mean, James Gunn's name was all over.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, he's got the experience and already he's the only director that got. No, well, the Russo brothers got their 4. They got 4 movies. So
they got 4.
He got 3. So,
but he was still credited for I think Infinity War and Endgame, even though he was gone. I think he still got credits on that.
I don't know.
But
so I guess tying that back to these new Avengers writers, is it worrying to you, Lou, to kind of spin your question back to you? Are you worried that we might not be getting like a follow-up to Multiverse or whatever else they've done?
I'm just worried because I don't think the pool is as deep as it used to be. And really, I feel like that kind of got blown out of the water around Eternals and Phase 4. Again, I've been on the record saying this. Why would you want to be a part of a superhero movie and have credits on that when it's most likely at this point probably going to be the worst thing on your resume? Why subject yourself, spend time, write, whatever, direct, throw it out there, feel proud about what you've done, only to have people drag it through the mud who have no idea what they're talking about? Is it worth it? Why spend time on an MCU movie when you can go back to horror or go back to comedy or go back to sitcoms or go write for streaming services? I don't know. Why not spend time there where we can actually have something that might feel like a passion project? But again, a new Avengers writer, you stepping into that is like being a coach on a team like for the Yankees or for the Lakers or for the Celtics or someone. Like the pressure that you're going to have, you can't make a mistake. And you might not make a mistake, but if people feel it's a mistake, it's a mistake. So it's almost like blessings to whoever steps into the role. Like, good luck. Because
your player can do the mistake and they'll still blame it on you.
Yeah. Or I, as the audience, am the one making the mistake, and I still say it's your fault.
Yeah. It's a tough thing because it makes you wonder if they truly are out. What's their next play, right? Because I don't think the Russos come back. I'll be honest.
They're smarter than that.
They don't come back. They know the climate of everything, and we always use him as an example, but it's because it's such a good one. Taika Waititi, he's not coming back.
I heard the other day that he was supposedly.
There's a
rumor coming back for Thor 5 and gonna just end all of the last bit of Chris Hemsworth's mental health that he has left.
It was a rumor though, but look how bad people dogged on it on the internet, and you don't think he doesn't see that to the point where he's gonna be like,
I still don't understand why people didn't expect that movie to be the way it was. I was not surprised in the least. Not at all. The way that you give somebody, I've used the example many times. the first Batman with Michael Keaton was pretty tame for Tim Burton. Didn't have all his Tim Burton-isms in it. And then they're like, you did great. We
Here
want
you
you to
go.
do the sequel. Do whatever you want. Batman Returns. All the Tim Burton goes nuts. He just all the Tim Burton that came out. Taika Waititi did a great job with Ragnarok for most people. Everything was well received. He's gonna flip out and do all the Taika Waititi things he wants with his sequel. And that's just what was gonna happen. They trusted him with it, and people liked it the first time. So why not double down on what people liked the first time?
But bro, even to this though, if you go back and listen to his comments that he said about the movie, and people said, "Hey, you turned up the comedy like a lot more," and he's like, "You guys just have a different sense of humor than I do. Like Americans have a different sense of humor." I thought it was funny. Where I'm from, this is hilarious. You guys didn't think it was that funny. Thought it was overkill. That's just kind of a difference of where I'm at. And he was on the record with that interview after Thor 4 came out. But Brando, I know you were going to say something before when we came about, who should be the new writers or whatever it might be. But my question for you, since and guys, just we've been doing a lot of behind the scenes of like rankings, and we did some trilogy ranking, and a lot of rankings for trilogies that were higher had the same director for all three,
except Batman. Ant-Man.
Oh, I thought you said Batman.
No, Ant-Man.
Oh, Ant-Man. Yeah. But Brando, how do you feel knowing that Avengers 5 may be the most important movie ever? You're muted.
Shit. I'm not a big fan of Quantumania, so I'm kind of happy that writer's out of there, because the dialogue in that movie was freaking dog water, and just every scene felt like it was just any scene of dialogue just felt like they were just not even talking to each other. I mean, I have to rewatch it, but from what I can remember, I don't know, that just like stood out to me after my first watch. But it's very important to nail the writing in this movie, especially an Avengers level movie where you're going to be dealing with many different characters and many different Kangs. That you got to make them all different. You got to make them unique. Got to make sure certain storylines from other people's projects are wrapped up, or not wrapped up, but get worked on efficiently. Is that the word? I don't know. But like his point with
should that wait before you move on, should that fall onto the writer specifically, or do you think for how big the MCU machine is, this should be something that falls on like a Feige's shoulders or something for this size of a movie, and we say, hey, here are your maybe they do this. Hey, here are all your parameters. This is where the story is going to go. Like, we need you to connect this dot and make this piece look good, or make this make sense. But this is where we need to go. This is the end goal.
I think on paper that sounds like a great idea. I don't know how their whole process goes, but like I have an example with James Gunn and what he wanted to do with Star-Lord for Guardians 3. But what the Russo did with him in Infinity War kind of like just didn't give him the opportunity. He went to Earth. He was on Earth for the first time ever, but doesn't even mention or just casually think that he's like, oh, like I'm on Earth. Maybe I'll go visit my grandpa or see if he's still alive. And it takes him to the third movie to where he was able to get that in. But I remember I read an article that James Gunn wanted to do a lot more with Star Wars character, but from what the Russos did with him, kind of like would have contradicted it. So that's where I was getting at with the whole Avengers 5 stuff, with like someone might want to use Falcon, but then or Captain America, but he might, I don't know, they might spin him to do something that another writer didn't want him to do in like his own project. So it's weird how they do stuff behind the scenes, but they're probably worried about spoilers too much of guiding them. And even something that The Last Jedi had to deal with was Ryan Johnson was not like allowed to see the script for The Force Awakens for like until he was pretty much done writing his own script for The Last Jedi, which makes no sense because how are you gonna write a movie without even knowing a middle movie in a trilogy without even knowing what's gonna happen in the first movie? And that's why it was so different and not a lot was picked up from what J.J. Abrams was setting up. So they need to figure out some sort of planning without worrying about spoilers too much.
That to me, real quick, explains so much about the entire casino run with them.
Exactly, like
all that casino stuff.
Yeah,
dumbest storyline I've ever seen.
Like if you know that Ryan wasn't allowed to look at like anything production wise for Force Awakens, he went into that movie without knowing what the heck he had to deal with. Like, that doesn't sit right with me. Once I read
so
about
dirty
that.
in those movies, it like just killed my entire anticipation for the last one.
But you look at something like Avengers, right, and Iron Man, and the character journey that they take within like the Avengers films, and it's still natural and they hold up even though they go through different directing styles. You look at Iron Man's character arc in the first one where Steve tells him, you're not the guy to make the sacrifice play, yet in Avengers 1, 2, 3, and then obviously in Endgame, he is the one who he puts his life on the line to make the big, game-saving play, if you would. It fails in Infinity War, but he still puts his life on the line and he fights Thanos by himself, and it leads up to Endgame. Same thing with Cap of, you're not special. You're only special because you were made special. It goes all the way through until an Endgame, till obviously the peak of that is, him lifting up Mjolnir. I still think they can do that.
I got that pop right there.
It's a great pop. But again, that kind of stuff takes time to see, because you don't always see that right away. Maybe they can be like, I don't know, Shang-Chi is your new powerhouse, but you won't really see that until he's made the save in Avengers, Secret War, and then or King Dynasty, and then Secret War, whichever one comes first.
Can we throw this out? Should he actually be a powerhouse?
Heck yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Especially with the 10 rings.
1,000,000,000%.
Okay. But if we're going to say that the rings in Kamala's band still have something to do with Kang technology or whatever it might be, future tech, he keeps those throughout the whole time, the whole movie? He keeps them through till Secret Wars? Because without them...
I think that theory is just put to bed, like after we saw a Kang already. I don't... If we don't get anything out of the Marvels giving any significance to those bands to do with Kang in any way, like after post credit, during the movie, anything, like I'm burying that theory. I'll
agree with that.
I'm a Grant Gustin standing next to the tombstone. Like I'm just done.
But honestly, though, because I think it takes those big moments where they start planting those seeds, at least. Because even though we were talking about it earlier and how I did say it takes time to put those theories and connect those dots, I do think we're at a point now where dots need to start connecting. I do think we're there, and I think the Marvels would be a really good dot to connect with, all of Kamala Khan's, and then they can connect that to something else down the line, right? Especially because Captain Marvel has already come out in Shang-Chi. That's a good dot you can connect now to Shang-Chi and Miss Marvel, and now it's getting clearer, Now it's like, oh, okay, I see that. I get that. All right, where else is it going to go?
All right. Let's do this real quick. If you were given the keys to both of these movies, give me 3 characters that you would make your focal points or build these movies around, and what would your big moment be? It's on the spot.
Ooh.
I know you mentioned Shang-Chi. I assume that it'll be in there somewhere.
But
if you had an MCU multiversal trinity that you got to throw out there, that's going to be your big 3 of these 2 movies. Who do you write around? What's your big moment that would have to happen?
I think for sure two of them at least. I'm having trouble with the third. 2 of them at least have to be Loki and Doctor Strange.
Ooh.
They are going to lead and form these squads. I think Doctor Strange will probably have America Chavez with him to help with the multiversal travel. Loki has Mobius and the TVA to handle some of that. So you got 2, but I guess the third just to boost morale for, having the experience of being somebody. Although it may not make sense the way it was written in No Way Home, but Spider-Man. Like, I would love to just have Tom Holland take front and center stage, especially with it being Secret Wars, the comic cover where he gets the black suit.
Ooh, I just thought
so cold.
That'd be cool. So if you're splitting them up into groups of 3, I think you have 2 leaders each group. Kind of like what Fabian said, but I'm gonna put mine with oh god, I just had him another gone. Shang-Chi and Loki's one of them. Because I think Loki is very good in the multiversal and magic stuff, but you need a powerhouse, and I think Shang-Chi would be sorry. Shang-Chi's great. I want to talk about that movie one day. But Shang-Chi's great. So Loki, Shang-Chi. Next up, you got your street level people. I'd say you put Cap and War Machine. Going back to what we were talking about, bro, build up Brody and give us Sam. Dude, you can't tell me that combo would not be
an angry Brody also.
I don't know if at this point you need to make him angry. He could have probably gone through that journey a little bit. But a Brody with an edge.
He's had no journey, apparently.
Apparently, according to fans.
Taking a nap.
But, you give him an edge. So I think you put Cap and War Machine. And then maybe you put Strange and Carol together.
Oh.
Just to have like a legacy. I know Sam and War Machine are legacy, but I think if you put them into a focal point, they might not be considered a legacy. Then you still have your quote unquote hard legacy with Strange and Carol.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have to bust out the action figures to write this movie.
I think we should.
The action figures, pops, whatever you want to do. We're gonna split all because there's too much to keep track of. We're gonna just lay out a whole war table and figure out who's gonna land where.
Hold on. That's actually a good idea.
The war table.
Where are we putting her? Oh wait, she's dead. Sorry.
Wow. on the ground with her legs.
we could
Where
do
are we putting him? I don't know.
He's gone.
You with the young kids? Yeah, those are mine. That's my group.
All right, y'all ready for my group?
Let's do it.
Andrew, Tom, Toby form the Spider Society. Easy. They get $20.99. They get the Spider-Verse crew. GG. Kang ain't standing a chance against the Inheritors. They're gonna bring the Inheritors. They're gonna convince it to get Kang.
You read Spider-Verse and just bring Spider-Verse in. Throw the whole omnibus in.
Spider-Verse Kang.
Could you imagine there's just like the generic like army battle scene, and Tom just tells somebody a portal just opens up and 2099 comes out. And
he's like,
he's animated with the whole squad, and they are the ones that fight the army, Spider Army. I don't care what the other enemy is. Like,
dude, I would cry so many tears. Oh my god!
But it would never happen.
It never would happen.
Never say never. They're already like computer generated little like 3D models they could just throw them in the movie.
When you got Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight already, he could just be he could play a variant
Double them up.
live action 2099. So that's all I'm saying.
Double them
All right,
up.
I actually have a question because there's all these rumors about all these non-MCU Marvel character actors that are supposedly coming back. Which ones do you think deserve to be here, or like which ones do you actually want to be, and which ones don't you want to be?
Listen, real quick to segue into this. My 3 that are going to be in a moment. You have one shot at this. You need to get Toby, Hugh Jackman, Robert Downey Jr. all on screen at the same time together, facing off against someone. I don't care if it's a superior Iron Man or someone from a multiverse or whatever it might be, but those 3 actors next to each other, that would do it for me. But I think the best thing that they could do is not do a whole Fox kills or Deadpool kills the Foxverse, but bring your OG Fantastic Four in. I think they should bring the OG Fantastic. Chris Evans, Jessica Alba.
I think that would be huge seeing Chris Evans as Human Torch instead of Cap. That would be crazy.
I think that
they don't even have to bring back what's his name, Michael Chiklis, or however you say his name, for the Thing. He could just be computer generated.
And Doom.
No.
Doom comes back.
Yes. That actor.
Doom.
Yes, bring Doom back. Dude,
no.
People,
God,
no. It would be very MCU if Doom were to show up and that's the first appearance. People cannot, I'm telling you, people will not handle an actual brand new Doom that comes in. There needs to be
There hasn't even been one original first, like, good Doom.
Well, he's never been in that.
This isn't like replacing Hugh Jackman. This is replacing garbage with gold. They have the potential to put gold.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I recently rewatched Fantastic Food. That is not a good Doctor Doom.
Okay, from him as an actor, or what he was given to do
in the movie itself, he's fine. It's just he's not the way he is in the comics. Like he's not. He's not like Latveria. He's not a king. He's not an emperor. He's not a ruler.
Do you think they're gonna do that in the MCU? I don't.
Yes.
I really don't. I don't think that they're gonna do that.
I don't want just an evil Tony Stark.
That's what it's going to be. That's what people want.
Who wants this?
No, people cannot handle a proper Doom. That people will boo him out of just.
Bro,
see ya.
He is just gonna be. Let's give him the personality of Tony Stark. Just make him evil, but like still give him life. He's basically just gonna be an Iron Doctor Strange. Evil.
Yes, and people be like, "Oh, I can relate to that. I understand that." You give him an actual here's why I say Doom has to be very simplified. There is not enough time in the MCU right now for characters to be introduced to go through a proper arc to have a proper resolution. Especially, we're not going to get Secret Wars Doom. The only way we're going to get Doom that has anything to do with Secret Wars is if we carry over someone who's already existed.
Is that actor even still an active actor?
I couldn't tell you what he's been in.
I couldn't either.
I don't even know if he's alive.
He probably didn't get much work after that.
Hold on.
No,
to the internet.
Seriously though, I'll ask you guys, do you think that the MCU can do a proper Doom and do him justice? And fans will allow that to happen.
At least having him be like a ruler of the Latvian country, and that place can be whatever. It doesn't have to be like it looks like something out of a Van Helsing or whatever town or city in random part of Europe. Like it could just be something similar to Sokovia, but actually like on a more. If it was MCU, I'd say that place was probably looking more like a more public Wakanda.
Where's he been though?
I don't know.
He's low key.
Like that's the hard part. That's the hard part. I think all the questions we have about the Fantastic Four still, where have they been? They're going to have to do that with someone like Doom. Where have you been?
It's gonna be the same thing with the mutants. That's my problem as well. Fair. Like it's just where these mutants are just gonna pop up out of nowhere. Like mutation doesn't wait. Like I mean, I guess it's technically
how many films in are you guys
for puberty?
Yeah, but think about this, right? Thanos' motivations were well explained within one movie, within Infinity War. They made him a complete character.
Okay.
I think they could do that with Doctor Doom. I'm not saying they should do it in one movie. I think Doctor Doom is a lot more complex of a character.
So is Gore. In a way,
he just goes oonga boonga.
with a name of like God Killer or God Butcher, you kind of get it. And I think they did a decent job at least explaining his origin. But what I mean is, Doctor Doom, there's like the jealousy for, Reed. There's the whole face thing. There's his which kind of goes into the jealousy, but his love for Sue and want for Sue, how he views his country, how his country views him. There's a lot of stuff they can get into, and I think you can do that within the span of putting breadcrumbs in different movies. They probably won't do that, but I do think that ultimately you more than likely can pull it off in a movie. What movie? I couldn't tell you because I don't think it should be Fantastic Four. But you can do it.
I think
if it was me, you don't put him in phase. You don't put him till after Kang Dynasty.
You put him in the mutant saga. He's not a mutant.
I don't think
that's just me playing devil's advocate of like Doom. I feel like Doom. He needs to be in a more clearly defined MCU, like we were saying in the beginning, because I think he'll just get lost.
Who would you compare him to? Like, if you could, I don't know if Marvel has done this with anybody. Who would you say is a good example of how they can MCUify him?
My knee-jerk reaction's Ultron.
Ultron was trash.
I do think that Ultron ultimately was trash. However, Ultron's appearance made sense from a look-back standpoint, to where you can link him and be like, oh, okay, Ultron. If you go back and look at where did he come from, you could say ultimately and start with Iron Man and work your way up and be like, okay, makes sense. Got it. The characters that they had involved, Ultron's creation, although it's a departure from what we knew, whether it be in the comics or it be animated, you're like, okay, Ultron could exist. But I can't tell you why Doom should exist, because there's been no signs of him whatsoever this entire time.
It's a pickle.
It's gonna be some BS reason, unless they yank the Fantastic Four and him out of another universe that is going to be going forward our MCU characters. Like they say their universe got destroyed and they just end up in ours. Like, or not ours, but you know what I'm saying.
Now, would you guys be okay if Doom came from 838?
I was gonna say maybe not. Even if it's not 83, excuse me. Even if it's not 838, I think that an incursion could maybe help this a lot. And I know people are still going to be like, oh, they were just there the whole time. But if you, in Secret Wars, the incursions did merge, two universes or all the universes.
Well, that was just because Doom got the powers. He put them back together at once they collided.
Yeah. But when the Maker comes, he planned for that. And that's what I mean. Like, if you have something like that where for whatever reason they survive the incursions, you can still have them be there. And I still think that people would accept them as a pre-established character and not expect a full comic origin. Because at this point, I don't know if people want a Fantastic Four origin.
True. So let's think of it. Let's say here we'll have our biggest breadcrumb yet. We'll finally get to see an incursion. Opening scene of Fantastic Four movie. They're in the real 616. Like they are like almost exactly comic accurate, and their world is being completely dismantled and torn apart. But Reed is prepared for it. They hop into, like, similar to the comic, that life raft pod to launch themselves somewhere else, and they end up in the MCU reality way before, maybe around when Iron Man is. I don't care what time frame they show up, but they go into hiding because they're not supposed to be there, and they might cause another incursion in their world because they're not supposed to be there. So they've been there the whole time. And
do you put that as a post credit?
I'd say I would just leave that as an opening, like, oh hey, this is how we got them, or I don't know, maybe they wake up and they don't know how they got there. I don't know.
Ooh, a la Flashpoint, where everything's different and they don't understand why.
Yeah.
How do you pull this into like an Into the Spider-Verse though? Maybe.
What do you mean?
Is that possible?
What do you mean?
Just from the standpoint of, you have the main story, whatever movie this might be, even if it's their own movie, and you have these events that are occurring, and they go through and do a quick, hey, this is how it happened, this is how we got here. Let's run through this. You know how they kind of say, you know, when they're introducing a character and they bring them in, each character, it's unique and it'd be very non-MCU. But is there a way that this is being narrated? Like, even if it was from a Johnny Storm, I think it's a character who's fun enough that could tell the story in that way to be like, this is kind of how it happened. Not Ant-Man like, but do it in a slightly different way to kind of pull that in. I don't know.
You want to bring your legacy? Have that opening scene, but with the original Fantastic Four. But they die. And the other Fantastic Four live from the other incursion world.
Yeah, because the two worlds are colliding.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That way you still have your fun little legacy cameo, but they die. And that way you don't have to do Fox or, you know, Deadpool kills everyone.
And they could just CGI them like Christopher Reeves and Adam West and Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage doesn't even have to be there to be Ghost Rider.
Yo, what?
He set precedents. He's done it before. Oh my god. I mean, yeah, I think that's a good way to introduce the Fantastic Four. Especially because you have the crux of Reed being so smart that he would know of the incursions. I think the X-Men are a whole different can of worms that it's like, how do you even begin to explain X-Men in the MCU? I have no clue, and I do not envy the person whose job it is to figure it out.
And this is why I'm thinking that, and you've brought this up before, but there needs to be a reset after Secret Wars. Something like a new status quo. We could keep some bits and pieces, like, you know, a la James Gunn in the DCU. Keep bits and pieces from the old MCU. That story is still going to bridge into this one, and it'll make more sense than the DCEU to the DCU. You get a satisfying thing, a scene at the end that shows who is in this new world, similar to how at the end of Secret Wars, Miles Morales was a part of the 616 now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've amalgamated what other universes existed prior to this, and you just fused them together.
Serves as a soft reboot, not a hard one.
Exactly.
Ooh, quick question.
Cool.
I'm going to throw this over to Spider-Man now. If there's an incursion and there's a giant celestial on one planet and no other planets, does that change anything? Do you think that that's used? That's a lot of energy that's just chilling there. Do you think that Tiamat being in 616 or whatever you want to call it will somehow change things from incursions that we've come to know? Is it possible? Well, I guess that could be yes, but would it be stupid to use it that way?
I don't know how to answer that question, but no. Like, are you saying like the events of a celestial happening on another universe, like what we saw in Eternals, is I'm a little confused. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, if you think about it, right? Let's say you have 838 crashing in the 616. 838 doesn't have a giant celestial just chilling, but
We don't know
616
that.
does. And
I'm kidding.
if they're clashing, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
does that
okay, and
change
then-
things? Is that a part of the catalyst that kind of can make things mutations and all that kind of stuff? Like, they have to get rid of it somehow.
Why are you asking about the
That's true.
celestial when they refuse to even acknowledge the celestial statue in the ocean for all these projects? It's just been reduced to just a subtitle in an article in She-Hulk, and it's just I don't know how this thing isn't important.
I feel like Captain Marvel's gonna reference it, or Miss Marvel,
Please,
the
anyone.
Marvels.
Anyone, I'll take.
I have a hot
Agatha
take
at this point to reference.
Yeah.
It. Like,
do they just, because again, I'm just pulling from the newest Secret Wars, which I think is the easier one to kind of pull from.
Yeah. That one's definitely going to be more the inspiration.
Yeah.
There'll be little homages to the other
Yeah.
ones, but I think we're going straight for 2015.
Quick run through of it though. Essentially, what helps them survive the incursions, or what helps Doctor Doom help them survive the incursions, is the Beyonder's power mixed with Molecule Man's power, all that good stuff, blah blah blah. Do they just substitute the Beyonder for the Celestial? Because we know that in the Eternals they kind of said it birthed a new universe or something. Like every time there's a new Celestial, so they could easily just be
or something.
Yeah, they could easily just fill in
the Celestials
Beyonder.
fighting our incursions.
Or maybe the Beyonder is the leader of the Celestials, or the creator of the Celestials.
Yeah, and
give him a new name.
Yeah, and having Tiamat there is like having the power of the Beyonder himself. I don't know. They could easily write that into it.
It's like you're getting a portion of his power if you manage to figure out how to.
Exactly. And then that's why it finally ties back, 7 years later, and everybody's like, yay, it makes sense.
Okay.
We finally went to the ocean.
Yeah.
Brando,
maybe they get the power from the dead one.
Yeah. Spider-Brenner, you said you had a hot take on something.
Oh, dude, my brain is going party curvy right now on a couple theories.
What hit us with it.
So, one of them was, what if the Eternals didn't take place on our Earth, and that was just a different Earth, and that's why we don't get any reference? Well, yeah, She-Hulk kind of counters that, right? With the whole newspaper thing. I didn't watch.
I mean, according to that news article, Wolverine already exists, so I don't know.
She could be in another world too.
That's true.
No,
that would be. Wouldn't that be a twist if they just later on just told us this one never took place? That's why took place in your world. That's why Daredevil had the yellow suit.
I'd be okay with
this
it.
one.
I'd be okay with it.
Like the Secret Invasion isn't referenced in Marvels because that's a different universe. Like that.
Ooh, that's ballsy.
Yeah,
though.
I don't know.
That's
that
really
would be
ballsy,
weird.
Though.
I don't know. They could save themselves with it though.
Maybe.
They'd be like, this whole time you guys are just impatient.
They could, but then you look at the thing with Rhodey, and then people they were like, "Oh, that was stupid. It immediately denies all his important life existence." You risk.
Yeah, but from She-Hulk and Eternals, what really important stuff have we really gotten?
I'm pretty sure
those to be the breadcrumbs.
Everybody would be happy. I feel like the majority would be happy if they just were like, you know what, Phase 4, the reason you guys didn't like it because it all took place in a different world. It was the plan all along.
Okay, all right. So Spider-Man, you cooked us all one. What's your other
so
one?
that was my first one. I have 3, I believe.
Okay.
Total.
Hit us with number 2.
Next one. Fabian brought up the Fantastic Four theory of from a different universe and hiding on Earth or whatever. What if they're hiding on a different planet? And in the Marvels, when one of the Marvels happens to switch to a different planet or with their little white entanglement issues, we get to a planet that Carol goes to, or Carol's on, and then boom, you just see Fantastic Four, and they're hiding off of Earth because they got out of Earth, or just happened to be in a different planet. And that could explain why they haven't been on Earth the entire time or whatnot. I don't know how it'll work exactly. Just like
they are space explorers, so that is
exactly.
Possible.
Do you put this like
in the movie? No post-credit scene or anything. Just
no.
Put it in the. Oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna say I agree, but what I mean is this Fantastic Four established, or did they just have their accident in space?
I don't know. Just
I didn't get
that far. I just took Fabian's theory of the incursion and took it to they got off of Earth, so that's why no one's heard of them.
With that, I think if they were, let's just say that they're somewhere in space. Who knows what's where the settings are going to be from the Kree standpoint. But I think it'd be super cool if they do the power swap and it's Monica that sees them and recognizes them. They're associated with SWORD. And they're in some sort of fight or some sort of battle or whatever it might be, or they see them somehow.
Is that the astronaut she knew?
I mean, there was that theory during WandaVision, but it was that random character that they made up.
Oh, true.
Yeah, but
did they answer that?
That would be 200 IQ.
They answered that?
If it was a double innuendo of it being like an actual astronaut.
I thought they revealed the person that they were going to be working with to help them get in the field. Don't get me started on theories.
If you notice though, in the trailer, she is studying some sort of field out there, and then when she hits it, that's when the whole light entanglement powers start happening. Now, obviously, they're using it to explain the Marvels, but they can easily put that up there as it affected other people too. And
dude, something like that could easily be something that Reed put up to be like, we aren't supposed to be here. We don't want to come in contact with anyone if they're from a different universe. Like, stay out. Like, we are staying in here. You guys stay out there. We cannot come in contact with you in any way. And they're investigating something.
In other words, Spider-Brando, you just gave us a really good theory. Not that your other theories aren't. They're really good too, but I think that one is like, it could be. And if you do it at any point, this is when you do it.
Bro, Pokemon Fire, man.
There'd be no other way, no other MCU-ified way to introduce the Fantastic Four than just a random appearance in the Marvels, just to hype up the Marvels even more.
They don't need the cast.
Not a lot of people.
Just put someone in a freaking suit.
Well,
show the back of their head. For like the last gajillion years, about 50 different people have been put into each role.
Yeah, it's just been rumors after rumors. But yeah, no, that's really good. I like that.
Brando.
I was gonna say, or with the Eternals though. Just they're flying to planets.
Can we time out for a second? Just think of how nuts this is for whoever has to write this movie. Not only are you gonna have legacy characters, but you have the Eternals. You have street level, cosmic. You have your war table is nuts.
Crazy. We need the action figures. We need.
How is there? Are these going to be 4-hour movies?
All the Eternals figures are on clearance everywhere. You can get.
That's true. That is true.
My Walmart still has the Eternals Funkos. Like,
we
still have the Walmart exclusive.
They'll be eternal.
Well, there you go.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
Is that 0.3 certified?
That right there.
That's 0.3 certified.
There you go.
There you go. Certified. Can't go a stream without one of those. All right, Spider-Brando. What's your last theory? Hit us.
Oh, what was the last one?
You had
I had
the incursion, the off-world.
Are we going to talk about who they're going to write to kill Hugh Jackman?
Stop.
He cannot die again.
Yeah.
So you can't let him live.
Nah, they could pop him right back where he was.
Oh, my third theory was a Doctor Doom one. And what if instead of Kang being the one making the the N Rings or the Bangalore band thing. What if it was Doctor Doom trying to find a way to get back to his own universe or something? And then those ended up just getting lost because he might have done some white displacement testing.
Mhm.
And that's why that's why the Bangalore has at least a white displacement thing going on.
I will say this.
That one's a stretch.
I've always said this. I thought that the big bad of this phase always should have been Doom, and Kang should be Avengers 1 big bad, but Doom ultimately is the Secret Wars big bad. I don't think that's the case. With 3 Kangs, I feel like you can have Kang Dynasty, but ultimately those 3 or 2 or 1. I don't think. I mean,
Doom would have had to be set up by now if that were the case.
No, if it's He Who Remains is like the ultimate big bad that comes back, because he's rumored to be in Loki again for whatever reason. I think it's stupid, but it's got to be a Kang, and I think it's either Kang the Conqueror from Quantumania, or maybe a He Who Remains, who ultimately is like, I knew this was going to happen all along. Here we go. Let me step up. Very similarly to how they did Thanos. You have Thanos 1, then you have Thanos 2.
Yeah. So the issue with that, and this is the only caveat, is that yes, Kamala's bands help her, but the implication after the show is that she is a mutant. That's the issue. So it's like, how do they write around that, you know? Because they just straight up tell you she's a mutant, and the fact that in the newest comic run they put her in Krakoa, she's a mutant.
Okay.
Like X-Men mutant. There's no way around it. So where do you go with that? You know, I think the bands are just a weapon for her.
Or do you like think that with the 10 rings, that Shang-Chi will still have the power that the 10 rings gave him, but not necessarily the ability that 10 rings have, but he'll have that because you've had him for so long that he's kind of like juiced up with him, essentially?
I could see that with Shang-Chi, but they haven't really gave you that breadcrumb of it, you know? The issue with Kamala is they straight up have said it.
Yeah. With
the, you know, oh, you're a mutant. And it's like, okay. And that's the one caveat. Which doesn't mean that Dr. Doom can't be out there experimenting with light, but I see it more as these are Kang weapons that got lost in their war, because they've talked about it, how they had a giant fight between all the Kangs, and I'm sure they would have made weapons, and those very well could be the weapons.
They need to show us footage of that war.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
We need to see. I mean, that is going to be very easy for them to do. It'll just be a very big CGI battle, just random stuff happening, just a couple instances of a couple Kangs, get close-ups of certain Kangs, taking out other Kangs, and boom. Like, you get to see what might occur with the heroes instead of just Kangs.
In Loki.
Or there are heroes in Loki, or in the beginning of Kang Dynasty, at whatever they decide to do in 2030.
At this point, that might be early. Kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. One final big question for you guys. One character that you think should have been built up by now that hasn't been on our radar, like a Shang-Chi, who will be effective in the next 2 Avengers movies?
Talking about like currently in them.
Yeah, we've seen him. We've seen him. Phase 4, Phase 5. To this point, someone who should have been positioned.
Someone that is just like a big question mark for why they haven't mentioned him or shown him again in anybody's project is Sam Wilson, Captain America. He's supposed to fill in these really big shoes for someone that already had a trilogy and we're only going to get to see him probably in one film before Kang Dynasty. Maybe we'll see him in Thunderbolts, a cameo. But for someone that's fitting such an important role in the MCU or in the Marvel Universe in general, he's almost less important than Ant-Man.
That's fair.
Yeah, I can't really think of any, but the one person when you asked that did really pop out is kind of Sam Wilson. Yeah. You just think by now he would have at least shown up somewhere.
Is it weird? I'm going to say White Vision.
No, that's a big thing too.
I just kind of forgot about that because he has not been brought up at all.
No.
Since the start of his WandaVision start, Phase 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So we haven't seen him at all, and we don't know when we will.
That again, like, I have my gripes, I have my enjoyments, but these little things, those two characters are characters that I feel like should have been at least referenced in Secret Invasion at a minimum. At a minimum. Why don't you call your Avengers? No, why don't you just say, why don't you call Captain America? Or you're coming down from, your Sword space station or whatever, Saber, and you're like, well, Sword was supposed to be doing this, like, why don't you use Vision? Or why don't you use this? Like, since Fury is some sort of, like, dark mastermind now, like, you have resources, why can't you reference? Is it like a contractual thing where they just can't talk about these characters because they have to pay them or something? Like, what is the deal?
Actually would have been clutch in Secret Invasion.
Oh yeah,
because he's a robot. They were going to sim a robot.
No,
they weren't going to hold him captive. He doesn't have DNA to steal for a super scroll. Like, he would have been perfect. He would have been the clutch thing. We have to find this guy. He's the only one that can help me in this situation. He probably has some way of being able to recognize which one is human or which one is a scroll. I'd give up.
That's a fair point.
Now I'm upset.
Yeah, a little bit. Thinking I was like, that would have been actually really cool to think if you think about it. Yeah. I do have a side note where I feel like this character should be more important than they really are. Is Shuri.
Yeah.
I know Wakanda Forever is recent for the most part, but I would think that maybe she, or at least someone from Wakanda, even if it was Okoye or whoever, you'd get a little more of like, there's some stuff going on. I know they want to like close the borders, keep things tight and all that, but I think you're at this point in the MCU and so many things are on the table. And again, you just found out that there's an underwater civilization and you do have Ross, who I get, spoilers there, but someone should have showed up and they're like, listen, I don't know. I feel like that's a big miss, but I feel like Shuri, when are we going to see Shuri next? Who knows? And when we do, is it going to be just an Infinity War 2.0? Here's home base. Here's all this tech. Here's all this money. Let's finance this universal, multiversal war. Like, let's go.
I'd be okay with it.
You could say T'Challa. Maybe not. But I was gonna say you could always have them be like, "Oh, T'Challa maybe thought of a day like this and made this escape pod to get out of Earth or something." Paying homage to the Avengers run that they did with that. Just an idea.
Lingering question. I don't know if you guys have considered this, but obviously the Wakanda Forever teased the idea that these guys were going to try and come back and take Wakanda for what they're worth, the vibranium. Is Captain America 4 or Thunderbolts? So you think they're going to touch on that in those movies, or you think we're going to have to wait till after the multiverse saga?
My brain and my heart have two different answers. I'll let Spider-Man No Hero go.
I feel like it'll be after.
My brain says after. My heart says do it in Thunderbolts. The thing is, every answer of like where could they put that, it's just put it in the Thunderbolts.
Kind of.
Because honestly,
bit we've said that.
they could do anything with the Thunderbolts, and they could literally be like, "Hey, we have intel that someone infiltrated Wakanda. We don't know who. We need you to go fight them." And then they'd send them to, they fight with Namor or something. Again, do I think that's going to happen? No. I think Thunderbolts is going to be some secret Black Ops government weapon thing, and it's just going to be Abomination or Red Hulk again. I don't know. But ultimately, heart says Thunderbolts, brain says we won't be seeing this till probably never. So,
kind of. I feel the same way. I think the logical is you use the Thunderbolts to have that big scale Earth infiltration, shadow war, secret war. No pun intended or anything. But you're probably not going to get a reference of this until
now.
Saga.
Does that feel like that resonates with like all the internet complaints that we're waiting too long for that type of like pay for? Because I mean you guys said it where it's like we know how the studio's thinking, and based on the consistency of what we've had with our brains, we know, hey, we're probably not going to get that for a while. But my heart wants it. Like I would want, like that would be awesome. It'd be cool if that stuff all connected together,
dude.
But now we're in that state where it's like, are we disappointed by that, or is it another lingering thing? Is it just, I don't know. It's just kind of up in the air for me now at this point where I'm just like,
it's a lingering thing for me.
Pay off these things.
This is where I feel like I am still in that camp of more is more. If you have more of these projects, you can have you can have that storyline and have 2, 3, 4, 5 shows or movies that go into that Wakanda Thunderbolt storyline. Then you have your cosmic storyline. Then you have this. Like, you need each phase needs 1 or 2 or 3 phases in it now. That's how big this scale's getting, and I'm sure that's spreading people way too thin. I'm sure that the budgets, it wouldn't make sense. But I'll go back to what you've always said, Fabian. Special presentation. There's no reason why I feel that a Thunderbolts infiltration arc can't happen within a special presentation on Disney Plus. I don't care about anyone else. I don't care about Yelena and Red Guardian having a great moment together. It's trash. Just throw that aside. Great.
What you got against Yelena?
Yeah, but how many times do we have to see Yelena eat food with someone?
Oppenheimer, bro?
Every time.
To answer the question that Fabian posed, those complaints are very valid, right? I think they just become unvalid when something just comes out and then they want an immediate answer. For example, I think a very good one is like we were talking about earlier, Shang-Chi, where it's like Shang-Chi doesn't really fit yet, so we need to wait. But now their post-credit scene was talking about the beacon that the 10 rings were putting out, and who was in it? Captain Marvel. Who was in the other one where there's a similar looking weapon? Miss Marvel. So now she's in the Marvels. Now you put that together. You know what I mean? Now's the time. Now, if in the Marvels comes out and nothing happens, then absolutely complain away. But back when Shang-Chi came out, it doesn't make sense to complain when the next film was I forget, but like something like No Way Home or Multiverse of Madness, where it wouldn't really make sense to answer that question just yet.
After Shang-Chi, it was Eternals.
So I would say the Eternals wouldn't. I don't think the Eternals would have made sense. It would have connected it, but it wouldn't have. And then, like, people, for example, that are like, well, when's Moon Knight going to connect? Moon Knight can connect anywhere, because that's one of those pieces of, it's a wild card. Moon Knight's very much a wild card that fits better in other ones, but, if you realistically, you could just be like, hey, here he is in Daredevil. Why? Just because.
Okay. Listen, Fabian, do you remember when you told the story? You have an hour, but you have two 30-minute segments.
Yeah.
Can you throw that out again? I'm curious what you guys think of this.
So originally what I was expressing was just I had this frustration for the Disney Plus format. At first I thought it was great because I was like, the Netflix format was just like, it was demanding too much out of so little, because the 13 episode demand, they're ordering those episodes. Like you are going to give me 13 episodes, whether you have enough material to stretch out or not. So a lot of those shows suffered to me because like Iron Fist, too long. Luke Cage, season 1 and 2, too long. Just Jessica Jones 2 and 3, too long. Like the length of those was just atrocious. The only ones that could ever fit that bill was Jessica Jones season 1, Luke Cage season 1, and Daredevil all 3 seasons. So arguably season 2. But anyways, when they first announced the Disney Plus shows, I was a little like hesitant for what we're dealing with now. So technically, my worry was kind of validated for like the general audiences. It's just too much. It's too much for a lot of people to follow, and it's too much because they have the 6 episodes, 8 to 10, depending on what it is, the short episode format, and you get a premiere that's really long, sometimes 2 episodes that are pretty long, and then the rest of them are just short, and there's just not enough runtime, and then you're on top of that putting like fillerish content into it. When Werewolf by Night came out, I was like, why aren't we just doing this? But the Disney Plus aspect of this entire marketing for the MCU should have been condensed down just to the Marvel one-shot format. They had one-shots coming out with the Blu-rays and DVDs for a very long time, and you were getting shorter ones, and then you got longer ones like the Agent Carter one. Now, sometimes you can have one where you got an hour, you do 2 30-minute ones, kind of like the cartoon Power Hour like we used to have as kids. You got I think of the Timmy Jimmy Power Hour, like Jimmy Neutron and Timmy Turner. Like you got your 2 episodes in one little thing, and that's what stretches out. And you have they drop these before a movie at random times. It's what keeps you driving to keep your Disney Plus subscription. You never know when you're going to get one of these, and that's how they keep their revenue and their subscriptions up. If they keep the consistency and the length of it, could be anything. It could be a short one like the Coulson goes to the gas station, little things, Baby Groot's, or it could be as long as a Werewolf by Night. I don't think almost any of the shows warranted the length that they had, other than maybe WandaVision. Because that one just naturally had the TV aspect, and then She-Hulk. That one is very much an episodic format type of programming, and her character fits that. But you could have wrapped up Moon Knight very nicely like that. You could have wrapped up. I'm running out of brain capacity. Apparently, I can't remember any of these Disney Plus shows.
Secret Invasion.
She-Hulk.
Secret Invasion. That would have been a good one. Or
Miss
actually,
Marvel.
I feel like if you build up, Miss Marvel is another one where you just have like the adventure that takes place over an hour and a half. And there's probably versions of these shows that you could make where you cut out a good majority of the stuff that isn't going to affect the future of the MCU, or just the character in that moment is not going to affect them. And you can probably still get what I'm talking about out of those programs. And I thought of this just simply because there's edits of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show where they condense it down.
I was just about to see that. You just read my mind.
Yeah, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show where they condense it down to like a 2 hour, 2.5 hour movie, and that's like 6 hours of content. And it a lot of it is unnecessary, and it's kind of painful because it kind of shows that they're just making content just to try and keep your subscription when they honestly don't even have to try that hard. But they can make these short little things, and then you just have all your episodes in one folder, one little thing. It's called the Marvel one shots, no complications. You got the episode, and then you look elsewhere for your formats, or you could put them in by season. Season 1, here are your one shots for phase 4. Season 2, here's all your phase 5 one shots. Like, I feel like there was an easier way to get this information to us without having us waste so much time.
Yeah, I
like that.
I like that too, actually. I will say a big thing about it too. The big issue that Disney Plus has is their episodic formula. Instead of just dropping it all at once, I think the weekly thing kind of hurts it because of stuff that we talked about. Obviously, the problems that their stories have, but also what we talked about with social media when everybody just talks up and you have a week, to digest, start theory, crafting, the latest episode, and then the next one comes and it's nothing like you thought. That does hurt it, and that's why I think we were talking about it either on a live or something personally where I said I wouldn't be surprised if Echo does really, really well because it's dropping all at once. I would not be surprised if it does better than what it's expected to because of that fact alone. But a one shot I do think is a lot better because, like you said, people's time is very valuable. Incredibly valuable. I can sit there for 2 hours versus sitting there for 5 50-minute episodes. And those one shots do serve a great purpose because it's like comics too, where and I'm thinking about the King in Black storyline. There was a lot of one shots just about Null destroying stuff. It was just random things. Like it was, I think it was the Empire one shot where Null just absolutely destroys the Empire of the Kree. Then there was another one. I think it was like a 2 or 3 miniseries where he fights. I forget the character's name. He fights this guy, absolutely decimates him, and that guy sends a warning to Eddie Brock. What was his freaking name? Wraith? I think it was Wraith.
I haven't. I'm behind.
Okay.
I've been a bad symbiote fan.
I think it was Wraith. I don't know if he's even. I don't think he's a symbiote. I think he was in Annihilation stuff. Anyways, that's beyond the point. They just brought up that 2 little mini issue thing, and then he warns Eddie Brock at the end before he dies. And it's a cool little thing to keep the through line going of, I think that came out like 2 or 3 months before King in Black came out. So it kind of always made sure you had King in Black in mind, that it was like, hey,
yeah,
this is going to happen. This is going to happen.
The other thing that they would do, and I don't even know if you guys ever dove into these, but they used the comics that were like the prologue or whatever, like the comic tie-in. They used to have that label on there that said, this is an official MCU tie-in. So the stuff in there was second. I don't know if they still are. I don't even know if they still make these anymore, but they were 100% canon. Like the way that they rebuilt the Rainbow Bridge and Thor: The Dark World was explained in one of these comics, and they used the Tesseract to make it happen.
Yeah, no, they don't do that anymore,
like,
really.
Why wouldn't that be in the movie? But like, you can use this one-shot format to do these little prologues to get you prepared for these movies.
You know who
also
did that?
Recap and of what's going on so far, and then give a little preview of what the start of the movie will be like.
You know who did that? DC with The Flash. They released a little, I think, 3 or 4 issue miniseries called The Flash Fastest Man Alive. And it essentially filled in the gaps.
I think I heard about that. Well, I'm saying like do a live action, like on Disney Plus, like instead of a comic, you can animate it. You can
animate it, 100%.
Get them together and shoot the scenes exclusively for Disney Plus.
Yeah,
and then when the DVD comes out, it's spliced together. Like, do what you want to do,
dude. And Brando, you said this a while back when we were talking about this. I think it was actually in preparation for The Flash, where it's like, who wants to read something?
In preparation,
majority wise, right? Majority of people saying like, hey, in order to watch this and understand it, you got to read something. Go buy it, go read it, whatever it might be. Fine. And we'll finish up and we'll give it this final thought here. Do you guys think that if they were to use the what if format, but play that up for a saga and do what you're saying with the one shots, but you can release an episode or 2 episodes or do a power hour special presentation and put it that way of like a multiverse saga special presentation. You get 2 weeks of them, 4 episodes. First 2 episodes are about important characters. Next 2 are about important characters. Move on, and this picks up right after, Avengers 5. Could people tolerate an animated tie-in?
I think so.
I think
they'll just be confused if it ties in or not. Because we got my cousin. I'm just gonna throw him under the bus. That refuses to watch anything. He refuses to watch Spider-Verse just because it's animated. So there's always gonna be those fans that just refuse to watch it because it's animated. Which is stupid.
I can't even imagine a world like that, man. I watch so much animation on a daily basis.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, you're not gonna watch peak fiction just because it's animated.
That would work, and I think it would work, especially since What If did, I think, pretty well. And like, you look at the concept of Captain Carter, it did so well that she came out in Multiverse of Madness.
It got nerfed.
But
nerfed? How was she supposed to survive?
She didn't get nerfed. She got
just split. Don't put her up against her, all right?
She didn't get nerfed.
Don't do it.
She got split. So, but you look at that, and then like how well people received the Infinity Ultron, and what was the other character that kind of came out of it? An evil version of Doctor Strange, even though it wasn't the same one. You look at how hyped people got for that. I think it works. Yeah. If you do it well, it could work.
I like about half the What If episodes.
Because half are good.
Listen, we're talking about this, and yet there's James Gunn sitting there, and he's told us he's going to be looping all this stuff together, telling multiple stories, using animation, live action, games, whatever it might be.
Star Wars DC. Star Wars is like that right now. Like,
yeah, but the thing is like the DCU is going to be a lot friendlier to jump on board with that. You can have a starting point and be like, okay. Where I watched Ahsoka episode 1 and 2, and I'm afraid to say anything because my fingers are gonna get ripped off through my phone.
I'm not.
Star Wars is tough, man.
But Marvel is getting there too. Marvel Marvel and DC, because you look at it. I mean, I think, and Greg, we can definitely talk about this at another time. Some of the interactions we've had have been, wow, just wow. It is insane.
You got some wild internet comments.
People are very protective of their cartoons and men in tight clothing.
Bro, this is funny. Just because you brought that up, I was talking to a friend in a Discord call last night. Me and him are both admins on this server, on a server. Which, speaking of Discord, if you're not in the 0.3 Discord, hop on in right over. I can't find the banner. There we go. Hop on in the link down below. But in a different server that me and him run, he pretty much told me No Way Home was trash. And I was like, I told him that his opinion was trash. Just because that is my heart and joy #1 movie of all time. And then he proceeded to use his admin privileges to keep on deafening and muting me and kicking me out of the channel just because he wanted the spite back. I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was funny. I
love how everyone turned on that movie. It wasn't
dude, he thought
the best thing.
He thought it was mid, apparently, and I was just like, "Your opinion is mid, bro. Come on."
It's the bad faith actors just wanting to say it just to say it. It's the same people that say Blue Beetle's trash. It's like, did you really watch Blue Beetle? Or are you just saying that because you have some sort of weird hatred, you know.
Speaking of Blue Beetle, everyone at my job apparently like went to go see this movie, and they're like all asking me like what I thought about it because they know I like superheroes and stuff. And I'm like, I actually didn't go see it, and I'm like explaining myself, and they're like, well, why? Like, there's Mexicans in it. Like, there's a lot of Latinos at my job, and I was just
That's
like, I mean, I'll catch it on the streaming. Like, I've been let down one too many times. It's an abusive relationship.
DC is an abusive relationship.
But at least you're open to watching it, though. That's the thing.
But they all loved it. Like, they all thought it was fantastic. And these people aren't watching superhero movies like me or you and I or anybody like that would watch this right now. Like
you should watch it.
Like average, like I'll call them normies. Like that's how like far from like this world behind me they are. Like they really like the movie, despite not really caring about superheroes.
You should watch it.
Listen, I think would it be worth getting a babysitter for? I think you would enjoy it, but I also think you could really enjoy it at home and have just as much fun. That's the way that this was presented.
The quality of the film from the trailers made me feel like it was meant to be streamed. Like it looked like a Nickelodeon movie. Like to me, the directing, the style, like the way it was.
The trailers did give that off, but I say the movie.
I don't think the trailers did it justice for when you actually watch it. I think the trailer, the music, the presentation of it is not the tone and the same feel that I had when I watched the movie. And I actually appreciated those scenes more during the movie, full well knowing that they're coming.
Do they play any Vicente Fernandez in the movie?
Got some back.
The background live just made it all the better.
No. Dude, listen, man. Blue Beetle, truthfully, checked a lot of boxes for me. And if you like that kind of like 80s synth with like the Miami vibe and a lot of cultural things that are very cool, main character, but a lot of good moments, it's solid. I mean,
I do want to see it. He looks great. The character looks great. I love the power set. It's just, again,
no, you can watch it at home. You can watch it at home. You can watch it. I'm a box office supporter, people.
In like 2 weeks, probably.
That's I might as well wait at this point.
Yeah.
I was gonna say at this point, if you haven't seen it, you should just wait. But I still think it's worth the watch. Like if you're a person who likes,
watch it.
If you're a person who enjoys just going overall to a movie theater and you haven't seen it and you want something to watch, I say you should. But if you want to wait too, more than okay, because I think you'll have as much fun at home.
I think you can, for sure, for sure, absolutely.
But is the MCU doomed, guys? Just to leave it at that, is the MCU doomed?
I think
just one word. One word.
If they don't have Doctor Doom, then they're doomed.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Oh man.
No context.
Yes. No context. Yes or no? Is the MCU doomed?
No.
Fabian?
I gotta give context.
No context.
I want to give context, but I won't.
Fight every fiber of your being.
My answer is yes.
Ooh. Spider-Man?
Yes.
I'm gonna say no.
Oh well, that's you have to tune in for the next episode. We got to talk about it. Why is the MCU doomed? Why isn't the MCU doomed? That'd be a fair conversation.
Yeah, that's a topic for another day.
All right, we hanging up the cleats. It's almost 2 hours. Give you an extra 54 minutes of overtime for everyone watching. You're welcome. Time and a half. I love that. Well, as you can see what's scrolling at the bottom, join the Point 3 podcast Discord. Check out the community events, extra behind the scenes chats, share your collections, tons more. If you're doing fantasy sports,
it's kicking off soon, baby.
Oh no, he froze.
Did I freeze?
No.
Did you guys
freeze? He froze on the outro.
No.
I froze on the outro?
On the outro.
I mean, I could hear you,
Wow.
but you visually were not there.
Wow. Okay. Well, just like we're not going to be here in 10 seconds, we're going to end this now. So keep watching, keep reading, keep nerding out. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.